Here we are in the garden of Lola Smith, who's been a primary mover and force for good of English language theater in San Miguel for more than 30 years. Lola, tell us, how did you hear about San Miguel before you moved here?
From my parents, they had started spending winters here in 1970. And I'd heard many stories about San Miguel, but had never been here until my late husband and I started looking for a place to live after he retired.
And what year was that, Lola?
He retired at the end of 85.
And then the first time you came to San Miguel, how did you arrive here and how long did you stay?
We had been traveling around the United States for a couple of months, looking at different cities that were written up as good retirement spots. Hadn't found anything we liked and were tired of being on the road. So I suggested that we come down to San Miguel, which I'd heard about for so many years but had never seen. I suggested we come down here, rest up for a couple of weeks, and then tackle the West Coast. So we came, arrived on a Wednesday night in 86, and bought an attention the next day, found that there was going to be a play reading at the St. Paul's Church, and went. It was being directed by Jerry Woden, who was the head of play readers at that time. I still remember the name of the play. It was The Laundromat. And since I'd been involved in theater all my life, I went up to her after the play was over, introduced myself, told her that I had quite a bit of experience and would like to get involved, and that my husband also had some experience and would like to be involved. And the next day, I got a call from the gentleman who was going to be directing the next play reading, in which he cast both my husband and me. And that was the beginning.
And that started your long career with theater in San Miguel. Tell us a little bit about the origins of play readers. Now we know how you got involved in it, but how long had it been going before and how long did it continue?
I don't know the exact year that it started. I believe that it was in the very early 80s. Letitia Eklund and Tommy Zadenberg, I think, were the two people who were most involved in getting it started. It was, at first, simply reading plays aloud in people's living rooms. But by and by, they realized that other people who weren't actually involved in a reading wanted to be able to hear it. And eventually it led to their starting work at St. Paul's.
And for people who are unfamiliar with how the theater at St. Paul's developed, can you describe how it was staged at St. Paul's?
The plays were given in the parish hall, which in folding chairs, which one of the church employees would set up for us every other week. The stage consisted of 8-inch high platforms that we had made and put together. We had them made in 3 different sizes and shapes and would arrange them as best needed for each play that we were putting on. And sometimes double height, sometimes single height, depending upon how many were needed. And the audience was usually just 3 rows of people. And as the group got to be better and better known, we were usually pretty full at every performance.
Tell us how the actors performed in these.
Those plays were done script in hand. The director planned all the moves beforehand so that each person involved in the play knew exactly where he had to walk or stand or sit or whatever throughout the course of the play. But there was no memorization involved. It was all done script in hand, which, strangely enough, never bothered the audiences. They accepted it as readily as they accept a memorized play.
Theater worked its magic.
Exactly.
So how many performances or plays did the play readers do over the many years it was in existence?
We performed twice a month, 2 nights for each play. And we're up. The group still exists, although it is now performing at the Santa Ana Theater. And we're now up to the second half of the 800s.
Quite amazing. And tell me, when did the Shakespeare reading group come to fruition as a kind of an offshoot of play readers without being staged?
I don't really know when it started. It was already well established when I arrived in '86 and is still going strong.
And do you remember who the original founders or the most important people were behind the Shakespeare reading group? Was Jerry Woden one of the most important people?
Yes, Jerry Woden, and I'm drawing a blank on the name right now.
Don't worry, but it's been going for many years.
Yes.
As well. Was Olivia Cole, was she a major part of that?
Yes, absolutely. Olivia usually did the casting at the Shakespeare readings.
Okay.
And of course, played roles herself very beautifully.
So the other very important theater group during this time in San Miguel was Players Workshop. Can you give us a little history of when it began, its early productions, and how you got involved with that?
Players Workshop was already pretty well established when I arrived. Its first production was Guys and Dolls, done in the winter of '81, '82.
And that was done at the Ring nightclub, correct?
I am not certain where it was
That's
done because that was before I came.
It was before I came, but I have heard stories that it was done at the Ring.
Yeah, probably, which is a very good venue for a musical.
So, by the time you came, how did you get involved with Players Workshop? And what is your history with Players Workshop?
Well, I have been involved in theater all my life. And as an ardent theater goer and performer, I was anxious to get involved in anything that was available for newcomers. I don't remember exactly how I met some of the people involved in Players Workshop, but it was already a well-established group when I came. And by the end of 89, I was also involved with that.
And during that time, where were the Players Workshop's productions staged?
In the theater at the Instituto Allende.
And can you describe that theater to us?
It was like a wind tunnel. It was very long and narrow and down a hill. It was built in conformance with the shape of the land on which it was built. And it was difficult to light, and it was difficult sound-wise.
And can you describe, like, the backstage area for us?
There was one co-ed dressing room on one side of the stage, and on the other side, a very small area that was actually the top step of a staircase leading down.
And when did the productions were at the Instituto Theater for many years, and when did the productions move from the Instituto to the Biblioteca in the Teatro Santa Ana?
Bob Summerlot had long had a dream of having his own theater, or Players Workshop own theater. And by the end of the 90s, we had enough money in the treasury to actually build our own theater on a piece of land owned, I shouldn't say owned because it's actually federal land, but we had empty space that was an abandoned lot on one side of the library. It was a garbage lot that was consisted of two broken down half walls and, as I say, a lot full of garbage. But we did manage to fit what is now the Santa Ana Theater.
And when you first, that theater was first restored by the Players Workshop, I remember that it was restored with a balcony in it.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, the year after the theater opened, it was found that the construction was not really totally safe, and the balcony was torn down, which was a shame because it reduced the number of seats by about 40.
And in fact, how many seats did it end up with in the Teatro Santa Ana?
Actual theater seats, 82, but there are places where they can place additional chairs, and I believe some of those additional chairs are now permanent.
Can you give us any highlights that you remember during the Players Workshop productions or experiences you had with Bob Summerlot or years after that? Do you have any great memories of Players Workshop?
Many, so many, it is difficult to pick and choose.
So this was a period of your life that was full of creativity and...
Yes, I was very active in both Play Readers and Players Workshop, and in fact took over Players Workshop after Bob Summerlot died.
Can you summarize what it's felt like to live and work here in San Miguel for so many years? How would you describe your life here in San Miguel during all these years?
Very fulfilling. I loved life here better years ago than what it's like now. San Miguel has grown too much for my taste. I loved the fact that it used to take an hour to walk a block in town because you had to stop and chat with everyone you passed because you knew them. It was probably a little easier for me to adjust to living here because I had lived in Brazil for many years and had learned to adjust to doing without many of the U.S. conveniences. But I loved the fact that it was so small and intimate.
And you knew so many people in the community.
You knew practically everyone.
Right.
You knew practically everyone. And of course, driving a car was... I remember that you used to be able to sit in the Jardín for 3 hours, and maybe 4 cars would go by.
Did you arrive with a car? Did you always have a car or not?
We arrived by bus when we came down the first time, but the next time we went back up,
you brought a car.
Brought our car back down.
Well, Lola, thank you so much for sharing with us. And I just want everybody to know that in 2 weeks, Lola is going to be celebrating her 98th birthday. Congratulations.
Thank you.